Thank you. Didn't see that coming, So my name's Adam. I'm the technical director at McCann Manchester. So I lead a team of obviously developers, but some DevOps in there, and creative technologists as well. So we do general sort of tinkering around the web, anything from sort of web platforms all the way through to sort of voice and chat, and increasingly emerging technologies, which we'll be talking about today. On top of that, I'm one of the leads on our emerging technology and innovation effort called Lab 13. So we'll talk about that also today.
Hi, I'm Chris. So I'm responsible for user experience and optimization. So now that we've switched laptops, things like this really annoy me, where the N drops down. It was fine before. The thing that I look at are things like user research, customer journey mapping, usability testing, design sprints and things like that we'll talk a little bit about later on. On the optimization side, this is around A/B testing and optimizing sites for conversions and things like that.
Cool.
So a little bit about McCann Manchester. We're an advertising agency that is part of the McCann World Group. So we're headquartered in New York, kind of a big organization. But it's the things that we do at McCann Manchester are these sorts of things. There's a whole other bunch of things that we do as well. But we kind of do user experience, and we have production teams and motion teams. We do conversion optimization, development. And the reason why I kind of wanted to show you that is because a little bit later on we're going to talk about culture a little bit. So the fantastic thing about having all these different disciplines in-house is that we can learn from each other, but they all have different cultures as well, different ways of doing things. So when it comes to innovation, how do you get all these different teams, different ways of thinking to actually work together to be innovative? So that's a little bit about us. Yeah,
we're quite a sizable company, so we actually employ 350 people on this amazing campus just outside of Manchester in Prestbury, in Cheshire in the UK. So we've got this amazing manor house and then like these new working spaces as well alongside it. We're sort of encouraged to use the space in innovative ways, so sort of get away from our desks. We've got loads of breakout spaces. We're encouraged to use the grounds for walking meetings in the summer, that sort of stuff. So we've got a really nice campus feel. We're also fairly infamous in the UK for having, if this clicker will work, an outdoor swimming pool. Infamous because the weather in the UK is never like that. But we have it anyway. And the question we always get asked is, does it ever actually get used? Because it's mainly covered up. And it does get used for our summer party. But at the end of the evening, it's normally full, isn't it?
Yeah, that's when the pool gets full, about 11 o'clock. But I wanted to show you these just because it shows you a little bit about the campus feel that we have and the culture that, we're very fortunate that we've already got a bit of a kickstart in not being 9-to-5 office workers. We do things a little bit different. And really, it's trying to take those things that we've got access to and to make the most of them for innovation efforts.
Definitely, and not to be outdone by the swimming pool, we also have a pub on site as well. Now, this does use for drinking, but it's actually a breakout space as well. So during the days, we use it to sort of run workshops and sessions like that. So it just shows the sort of breadth of stuff we've got on site at McCann. But we're not here to talk about McCann today. We're here to talk about how to make space for innovation. So what we wanted to do really was just to open the doors to our burgeoning innovation effort. We're trying to put a bit more process around how we tackle and how we look at emerging technologies and how we innovate them with them, so for brands essentially. So we'll open the door to some of the strategies and processes we've put in place, and hopefully you can learn a bit from that. And also just open the discussion as well, really. What are other companies doing? It'd be interesting just to have a chat around that. On top of that, we've got two fairly juicy case studies, one on the building of a chatbot and the learnings from that, and also one on augmented reality and some of the prototyping we've been doing along the lines of that, with a smattering of Umbraco added in there too. So there should be something for everyone, whether you're a designer, editor, developer, there should be something for everyone in this talk.
So why innovation and kind of why is it important to us? So McCann goes back many years. I think 1912 we had this truth well told statement that's at the heart of everything that we do. But our role is to help brands play a meaningful role in people's lives. And what's really interesting at the moment is that people's lives are changing through technology. The way that technology is changing so quickly and the rate of change is so fast that the way people are living their lives is completely different from day to day. So our role to work with our clients is to work out how can we use technology and other things to play a meaningful role in people's lives. So if we just stick to the day-to-day, we'll kind of do okay, but actually we need to stay ahead of the curve. We need to do more. We need to be innovative. So this is why kind of this journey that we've started to go on about having a dedicated innovation effort is really important for us and really important for our brands as well.
Yeah, and we're also just looking at tech and how we can create stories and meaning out of new technologies. I think in the years that have gone past, we've done a good job of keeping abreast of sort of marketing technology alongside our day job. You know, we'll be building web platforms, and when there's a bit of time, someone will go off and do some investigation, then report back. But the rate of change in emerging technology is exponential at the moment. You've got things like virtual reality and augmented reality, you've got chatbots and voice, you've got blockchain from somewhere up there, who knows what that's going to be. But we just felt that there needed to be a dedicated innovation effort around this and a team wrapped around it, so that's what we're doing at the moment. So what we're going to do next is show you 3 areas which have been important to us, essentially. And this is what we've put in place, and we'll just share some of the workings of those. So the first one is space. So we feel that space is hugely important for us and how we project back our innovation work at McCann Manchester for two reasons, really. The first one is to have a space for the team to gather, and a space to sort of run workshops and run tech demos. And the second reason to have space is to report back those findings to the wider company. We're quite a big company, so if we can have somewhere where we gather to innovate, in inverted commas, it shows off what we're doing to the rest of the company, and they can just see what we're doing, essentially. Initially, we cobbled together what we could for this, so we literally had some wall space and a load of post-it notes on that. And that was our innovation hub. But two things aligned for us around this, which was really nice. Firstly, we went out to our wider networks just to see what other agencies were doing around this, just really opening the discussion. And also one of the meeting rooms was up for renovation in our home. So we actually said, can we get that turned into an innovation suite? Which is amazing, because it happened. And this is called Lab 13. Some of the formatting's gone on that, but we'll ignore that. So Lab 13 is the innovation suite itself, and it is also the network we're part of. There's labs across the world which we're part of. But I just want to caveat that looks amazing, but you don't need a dedicated space like that. The wall space worked just as well for the team, for us to sort of gather, and also for reporting back to the company. So we're very fortunate to have this space there, we feel.
I was going to say, and it doesn't have to be a glorious room. As Adam was saying, it could be a space, it could be an area of the kind of the office, it could be just a different physical space. It might be somewhere at home, it might be a coffee shop or whatever it may be. But to try and detach yourself from the day-to-day, you kind of need to have this mindset of innovation, and it's very difficult to stay at your desk or whatever it may be, doing the same thing, expecting something new to happen. So space is just a nice way to change that mindset, to step away from the day-to-day, go to this place where you can be innovative. As Adam was saying as well, if that can be visible, that's great, because that's going to bring along a whole bunch of followers as well. So one of the things we were fortunate with is that room that kind of came up for grabs that we kind of borrowed. There was a couple of rooms around it as well, so we kind of expanded a little bit. And this is really looking at different types of space, because we use it in different ways. So the previous image was very much a workshop space where we gather people together, and we'll use a Surface Hub to make collaborative wireframes and sketch ideas out. We also needed a big wall. So anyone who kind of works with the UX team, we have an obsession with post-its. A lot of things that we do are things like customer journey mapping. So we're looking at all the different phases of the customer journey. And we'll bring a dozen people against this wall, and everyone's going to be post-it noting for the day. So we found a space with a big wall. We needed the room where we can sketch and ideate, and then we needed a big wall where we can stick a whole bunch of stuff as well. And then we had a third.
We've got this third space as well, which we call the holodeck. So one of the areas we're focusing on, which will become apparent later, is, of all of those different emerging technologies, we needed to sort of narrow down to a few. So one of them is voice and chat. So we're looking at that, and also augmented reality and a touch of virtual reality. And for those, you need space. So we've got this thing called a holodeck, which is purposefully quite a blank space, so we can sort of roam around a little bit. And also when we've got big projects on, it turns into a bit of a war room, so it gets quite messy quite soon when we're running those. On top of that as well, we've got a workshop space. Now this is the sort of messy space for the developers essentially, where the devs can go in there whenever they want, or any sort of creatives as well. We've got soldering irons in there, we've got a 3D printer you can just about see there, Arduinos, that sort of stuff, just to get people getting a bit more creative with tech and exploring it in new ways, I suppose. On top of that, when we first had this space, we needed to fill it with some tech. Now, for this as well, we just cobbled together what we could. We literally went to our devs and the wider team. It's like, what have you got at home? Can you bring it in? Because we didn't know which area we were going to invest in at that point. So people brought stuff in, and we started running tech demos with the actual tech that people had brought in. And in the end, we did invest in a couple of the things that you can see on there. The 3D printer was actually a bit of a freebie. One of our clients is Aldi. At one point, Aldi sold a 3D printer. Who knew? And when they were taking pictures of it for their special buy magazine, we were like, what are you doing with that 3D printer after? In the end, we managed to get it. We tried to print a unicorn head there. It kind of came out okay, I think.
I guess I was going to say as well, also look at, try and be resourceful as well. So there's another partner agency that we have, which is about 10 minutes down the road, and they were interested in this as well. So we tried to join forces with them. We looked at the kit they've got, the kit we've got. So it wasn't just a case of going out and buying stuff. It's actually how can we gather all these things together, old handsets or whatever it may be, just so we've got a whole bunch of interesting things to try stuff with, basically.
Definitely. So we've got this space, which is amazing, but you can't just put people in a space and go, now is your time to innovate. Go off and innovate, please. So you need some sort of tools or springboard to put in place around that. So moving on to tools. Yeah,
so exactly that. So we've kind of talked around the tech a little bit, and by tools I don't necessarily mean physical tools, but actually design processes and frameworks, because innovation by definition is about being new, about being innovative. So if you just do the same thing each time, you're not going to get to anything new. So one of the things that we heavily rely on, if we can click through, is the design thinking. So this is something that's been around for ages. It's essentially a nice way of branding the design process, but what it allows people to do is to follow a particular framework to make them think differently. So humans are quite lazy, and if they find something that kind of works, and then that problem comes up again, you'll try the same solution, and you kind of keep getting the same sort of thing, and things work, so that's okay. But design thinking is a mechanic that allows you or encourages you to think differently, to come up with alternative views. And it allows everyone to be a designer. So if your idea of design is that you hand a brief to a designer, they go away and work on their Mac for a few weeks, then come back with a reveal, this is the exact opposite. This is where you gather your stakeholders together. They could be developers, designers, testers, account managers, clients, or whatever it may be. And you can follow the design thinking framework to have them empathize with their customers, to conduct interviews and usability tests, to define as a group, as a collective, how you want to solve this problem and the area that you want to focus on. But also through to the ideation. Let's do some really big, divergent ideas. Let's just come up with crazy stuff. Forget about quality for the moment. Come up with a huge quantity of ideas, really radical things. Because in that, there might be some nugget that you can actually take forward and make something real out of it. Then, of course, we've got prototyping and testing and implementing. So it's a pretty standard kind of design process, but by having that framework that you can pin on the wall and work against, you make sure that you're going through each of these phases, and it becomes a very collaborative process as well. So again, it's not stuck behind Photoshop and Adobe kit, it's actually using game storming techniques, physical play, workshop techniques, and kind of getting the whole team together back in the innovation effort.
Yeah, it just really helps like non-creatives as well and non-designers get involved, which is amazing.
Exactly, just because you don't have the word designer in your job title doesn't mean you're not creative, it doesn't mean you've not got an idea, so it allows everyone to get involved in the mix. And then you get ownership, the whole team has got ownership, you don't have to go through as much sign-off because everyone's created the idea, it belongs to everyone. So yeah, this kind of can't be used on every single day-to-day project, but by having this tool or this framework, it creates a springboard for innovation, basically. And then you've probably heard of this. This is Jake Knapp from Google Ventures. They invented the design sprint. So buy this book. It's a really lightweight read. It's really, really good. The last couple of years, it's taken off. Everyone's going mad for design sprints. And really what Jake did is he took the design thinking process, which has been around for decades, from Stanford Design School, from MIT and IDEO, and what he did is he compacted this into a 5-day process. So this design thinking process that could take weeks and months, completely squished down to 5 days, really accelerated design thinking process. So on the Monday, you interview customers. On Tuesday, you come up with ideas. On the Wednesday, you decide the priority of those ideas and which ones you're going to take forward. Thursday, you prototype, and Friday, you go and usability test with a few customers. So within 5 days, you've decided what area you're going to focus on, and by the end of it, you've tested it and validated to see whether that prototype's worth moving forwards with. So again, all based on design thinking, but for us, if we have a concept or something from a team or a client, we can take it into our space. We've now got a framework. Within 5 days, you're going to get something out the back end of it, which will know whether it's got legs or not, basically.
Definitely, and these are existing frameworks which are out there, but you can adapt them as well. So we've adapted those two actually into a thing we call a rapid hack, which is like a proprietary sort of session which we run around problems. So it could be a client's brief, or it could be a problem which we've isolated, which we want to tackle. Like we're going to look at plastic in the oceans, such a broad topic, but let's see what comes out of a rapid hack for that. The idea is we inspire the attendees of the rapid hack, who generally aren't developers and aren't creative, so we try and get ideas from other sources. We inspire them through a talk or through sort of slides, that sort of thing. And then they ideate. So they ideate normally paper prototyping. So get them on paper, going up with as many ideas as possible. And then we have a jury in there, and that jury is a creative and is a developer. And then they choose out and eke out the best concepts, the best ideas, and then offer them up for prototyping. And then they go into the lab for prototyping sessions.
So we kind of talked around having this physical space, a place that you can kind of go and detach from your day-to-day, and you've got permission to do something new there. But you need those tools. You can't just go, right, I'm going to innovate now. You need that kind of framework to get you going. But the third thing that we found is really important is culture. So obviously myself and Adam are a big part of what we're doing at McCann Manchester. But we need a tribe, we need a whole bunch of other people to kind of come with us as well and bring problems and help with solutions and their own ideas. So culture is something we found is a really important aspect to kind of focus on as well for innovation efforts.
Definitely. It's sort of one of the ways we do that really is because it's such a big company and it's quite an old school agency, I suppose, looking back at it, is just show off this tech. So we run tech demos. Initially, that was just at the end of the Banco developer desks having the AR and VR kit out so people who passed by would show an interest. But we've since sort of upped the game a little bit where we have dedicated tech demos. We actually call them tool time education internally. And they're just open lunch times where people can come and play around with the tech. We can show off some of the prototypes and just really sort of inspire more ideas, I suppose, and inspire people to want to get involved in the rapid hack sessions that we run.
I think that's about, for us, really, it's kind of, when you do those sorts of things, it's about being visible and being noisy so that people kind of do go, well, what are those guys doing over there? I want a part of that. So we were putting games on, we were doing roller coaster stuff on the VR where people are falling over and just trying to create a buzz about it. And this was all before we had the physical space to move into. So people knew that this tech was coming, they knew kind of who to go to talk about it. And then when we brought it into the tech suite, the Lab 13, they got a good understanding of what it is we were trying to do.
Definitely. And there's a sort of rapid hack in action, I suppose. The people in there are account managers, they're project managers, there's a tester in there. It's not developers getting involved in this. And just to show you that ideas can come from anywhere, and that's sort of the core belief of what we're sort of talking about here, I suppose. And last but not least... batteries are going. So yeah, the last one, you've seen this shot a few times now, but we also tried to work out, again, how can we improve the visibility of this facility that we have. So it might not be that it's something around innovation. So, for example, we're reusing the space here for usability testing. So if you look at the screen, you can see we've got some eye tracking on there, we've got a participant in the bottom corner. And for me, from a user experience point of view, I want to try and democratize design. I want developers and testers and account managers to get closer to the customer. I want them to have exposure hours. I want them to see the end users in action. So we can use the space for training. We can use it for replaying usability tests. And the more you bring other people away from their desks and put them in this innovation space, it just gets them thinking a bit differently. So again, try and repurpose what you've got to encourage people to come along and get involved, really. Fantastic. So we're going to now dive into some case studies. So that's sort of some things that we put in place in order to drive this innovation effort forward. We're now going to go off on a bit of a tangent. So this is a couple of things that have come out of that effort, I suppose. The first one's around a chatbot, and it's sort of very practical. So we'll sort of teach you some of the learnings we've got around building chatbots. And the second one is augmented reality. It's more about prototyping and exploratory work, I suppose. So on to chatbot.
Yes, I'll take over. So I'll work out where I have to stand to make the clicker work. So a few slides on the chatbot. So just to set this project up, it was a chatbot for Aldi, which is one of our clients, but it's a chatbot specifically around careers and recruitment. So it wasn't to do with the grocery side of the business. It was around how people apply for jobs, how people understand what jobs are available at Aldi. So as a bit of a side note, I'm going to layer on a design thinking framework to this so you can see some of the stages that we go through to get to our solution. So the first one is empathy. So the background is that we were tinkering around with chatbots for a while. We'd not done anything commercial, but we wanted to do it. And through the tech demos that Adam mentioned, we managed to have a conversation with our social team. So the social team were managing the Aldi recruitment site. It turns out they wanted a chatbot as well, and they knew what you can do in Facebook, and suddenly we've got two teams talking together about the same thing. So that's a big tick. The fact we've got this innovation space that brought people together, we're now having a conversation about the same thing, which is great. So the problem here was that the social team were managing the Facebook site, and they were getting hundreds, thousands of people saying, have you got any jobs? Have you got any jobs? What jobs are at Aldi? What jobs are going? And these guys had to manually reply to all these people. And it turns out the user research stage we did at the start, that empathise phase, is we understood that actually they had stock answers to the questions that some of the people were asking. And we also found out that if you themed those questions that the general public was asking, actually a chatbot could answer about 80% of those questions. So the social team got very excited about this because they told us that they did shifts at the weekend. So they're spending 3 or 4 hours individually at weekends to manage all the responses. It's probably not the best use of a social media manager's time to just kind of answer. So the chatbot felt like a really good solution to try and solve the problem, but it's something that was new for us, it was something that was new for the client. So we wrapped it in the innovation badge. Let's try and do this thing together. So the first thing we did is go into the definition of what is it we're here to do. So again, we didn't run away and start designing this thing. We brought the clients into a workshop space. We had developers, we had designers, we had account managers, we had the clients, and we decided between us, this piece of innovation that we're going to do, it's not going to cost an absolute fortune. It's a quick, let's get something done. We've not done it before, you've not done it before, but let's work together through this. And so it's very collaborative, everyone was on board. The fact that we were workshopping this out meant that there was a reduced kind of sign-off time because everyone was making decisions there and then. So we got to a place where we identified what this chatbot was going to do. And this was all around being able to browse for a job, being able to ask some FAQs, and also to kind of search for, or understand what roles were available. So not just actually go and get a job, but what types of jobs do Aldi offer. So we mapped out the information architecture. So we understood that from these 4 epics that we were going to deliver, it got way out of control. Each one of these little boxes, a grey one or a black one, is a conversation that could be had around a piece of content. This is just a snapshot of this architecture. It's absolutely colossal. And that starts, I don't know if you can see, you see a little start there at the top right. That just starts from 3 questions. And when you go off on the decision tree, it becomes absolutely huge. So we had to do this architecture to work out, okay, what on earth are we doing? Because this is such a big thing to take on. What's the priority? Is it this stuff down here? Is it this stuff over there? So mapping out the architecture early on was part of the definition phase of design thinking, allowed us to say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing. So then when we've done that phase, we got onto ideation. So we got the architecture, we knew the things that we're tackling, how do we go about doing it? So this for me, there must be loads of stuff on the web about how to design chatbots, but this for me was my springboard. So I found this article online that's talking around the components of a conversation. So this great article talked around how you can break a conversation down into 6 components, or script blocks as we called it. And that became our way of writing the conversation for the chatbot. I'm going to give you some examples of those. So the first type of script block is an opener. So how do you actually start that conversation with someone? So this allowed us to think of lots of different ways of doing that, but we arrived at something that was like this. So we've only got a few messages here, but already it's personalized. We've got an emoji, which kind of sets the tone. It's also introducing itself as a careers bot, so we're not pretending to be a human. That was a decision we made early on as a team. It tells you what it's here to do. It's not here to allow you to add groceries to your basket. It's here to do these three clear things, and which one of them do you want to do? So an opener are just different types of text and pieces of content that allows you to open a conversation. What's really interesting from the architecture piece is that an opener might not be at the start. So what happens if someone started a conversation, left, and then came back? You need to reopen that conversation again. So that architecture allowed us to think of things like this. So it looks like you've been gone a while. Do you want to pick up from where you left off? The next one is cause. So as the name suggests, this is the heart of the chatbot. This is the thing that it does. So what we wanted to do is make the best use of the capabilities of the device. So one of the cause is looking for a job. Well, the device has got GPS on it, so you should be able to look for jobs near me. So we allowed you to use your location, and that would go and retrieve a map, and it would tell you about the kind of jobs that are around you. So again, probably a little bit of a tip is work out what your cores are and work out how can you make best use of the device. Is it using the camera, using the GPS, hooking into something else? But make those core experiences very, very good. Do a few things very well rather than lots of things average. Skips. So one of the things you can do is you can search by location, which I've shown you. You can search by job type, so maybe onto a warehouse job or a back office job. But we've got an accelerator in here, so maybe you found a job code somewhere. So if the user hits in job ID, they can bypass the whole conversation. So skips are another type of content block that allows the human interacting with this just to leap ahead of the decision tree. I've got some information that can accelerate me through this journey, let me use it. Extras, so how can we delight people? So let's not just deliver something that's just usable, but how can we go above and beyond? So someone's looking for a particular type of job here, but what we've done is give them a little bit of information to set their expectations of what that job might be like, but also deliver some video content as well. They weren't expecting that. That's going to help them out. It's going to delight them a little bit. It's a nice touch to the user experience. And then finally, we've got chatter. So how do we make this conversational? So using kind of the ellipsis as people are typing, tone of voice, just making it not feel like a bot, basically. I said that was finally, but this is the final one. So this is the enders. How do you end a conversation? So there's lots of different ways that we ended the conversation, and this is just one example of it. So we've given you the answer, we've given you the technical team's telephone number. How else can I help you? There might be other things that you're wanting to do. But those 6 script blocks helped us to formulate what the content should be, what the conversation would be, and how to generate content for this chatbot. Then the design thinking stage, we moved into prototyping. So what we normally do in my world is we sketch and wireframe, but how do you do that for a conversation? So I actually think we did this wrong. So we used a normal wireframing tool. This is Axure. You might be familiar with Sketch and InVision and XD, similar sort of stuff. But it allowed us to visualize a conversation very quickly. For anyone else who's built chatbots in here, I'd love to know how you did it, because for us this was it worked, but it just wasn't the right thing to do. But it allowed us to get things onto the phone that we could kind of test as well.
Yeah, some code, I know. So one of the things, we actually used a framework called Microsoft Bot Framework for this. There's many more out there. That's one of the most considered we found from our research. But the output of it is very robotic. I know that sounds like an oxymoron. But we wanted it to feel a bit more friendly and go with the tone of voice of Aldi. So we wanted to program in some empathy. So the very simple algorithms we've put in. This one, speak with pauses. So a lot of the content was being put in by the client was quite hefty. So we chopped that up and then add in the ellipses and then add a delay as well. So give them a chance to actually read it before it presents them with the next block. If you just use the framework as it is, it's quite sort of staccatoed, I suppose, coming out.
So then onto testing. So yeah, we got it on devices, we tested it in the suite, we had the client observe kind of how it all worked. And again, Adam has shown you the code, so it's not just about what the screens and the conversation looks like, but how it feels as you're using it as well. So this was a really important thing that we did. Dun, dun, dun.
Umbraco. So we did not use Umbraco from the start of this project, I'm sorry to say. The sort of content in a chatbot is almost like more raw than any other channel we found. I'll try and explain that in that on a website, the look and feel and the tone of voice of the brand is more or less portrayed, yes, by some copy, but mainly by design. But in this, it's pure content coming out. And with that meant that the client, when in production, changes the content a lot more, we found, than the website. And we didn't have any content management system in from the start, I know, boo hiss. Which meant a lot of the time was going into development to actually hard code change these things. So we panicked, we put Google Sheets behind it, that kind of worked for a bit, and now we are retrofitting Umbraco into the CMS at the moment. So my lesson for you here is, if you're building a chatbot, try and get Umbraco in from the start. The way we're doing it is not headlessly, so we're not firing off to the API, which we could, but we didn't want the risk of it not working, there being a connection issue. So we've got it as part of our CI pipeline or deployment process. So when we're deploying the chatbot, it hits an API, which is essentially a headless Umbraco instance, pulls down all the content and turns it into JSON files, which are then deployed. So it does need a deployment, so there's a slight restriction there in terms of deploying content, but it works well. But get it in from the start. That's my tip for you.
And then the results, so we got good results already, we kind of deployed this. And I think the results that we got was that we had more people applying through the chatbot than through the other channels, better quality applications, so more people got through. But also when the social media managers said that those 4 hours I used to spend every Saturday, it now takes me 2 minutes of my time, that was the big win. So we really did manage to solve the problem with this particular solution. So a few things that we learned on the way. Visibility leads to opportunity. Had we have not done the tech demos and had the space, we would have not had the conversation with the social team. If you can frame a project as innovation, that allows you to be collaborative with the client and stakeholders and go through those design thinking processes. It's not just a normal project, it's an innovation project. Design frameworks are your friend. As you see, kind of having those things in place allows you to do the empathy, the definition, the design. And specifically in terms of chatbots, if you don't do your architecture up front and understand what it is you're aiming for, they can spiral massively out of control. Just one extra step in a decision tree can have a huge impact, and we should have used Umbraco.
Cool. Sorry if we rushed a little bit there. We're trying to squeeze in this into 50 minutes now. Augmented reality. So this is the sort of second case study, which is around a whole area, really, and just around sort of the way we've been prototyping it. We focused on this because we had previous form in it. We've been looking for the past 4 years, really, around AR, because as an advertising agency, that world just feels like there's so much to capitalize on for brands, essentially. So we've been working with it for a while, but wanted to drill more into it. So AR itself sort of splits down into 2 areas, really. There's the idea of wearable AR and mobile AR. Those who don't know what augmented reality is, it's essentially a way of revealing a digital layer of data that's in the real world around us. And you can do that with 2 ways, via a wearable headset or with the mobile device, so presenting the camera up and seeing the data to be revealed on screen. So wearable could be quite immersive, so it could be a game of some kind. Mobile might be more utility, so it might be, where's the nearest bar or something like that. Wearable, we're keeping our eye on, but it's not even early adopter, it's dev kit. You might see it in exhibits, you might see it in installations, but for the average punter on the street, it's not so much we can do for brands. So mobile is where we're focusing our attention. Mobile itself splits down neatly into sort of 2 packages as well. We've got like native applications and then social platforms. So native would be building applications natively for iOS or Android, that sort of stuff. There you get huge benefit of, it can be quite enterprise. The file size, not so much of an issue. Also, you can integrate with many things. It's going to be downloaded as an application. Whereas social is leveraging, this is like a new world in AR. And it's leveraging things like Snapchat and Facebook to produce augmented reality experiences. Native, you've got the restriction that people have to download the application. So for small campaigns, for brands, that's a big ask. Unless it's a really useful utility, no one's actually going to download it. So that's why we're putting a lot of our focus on sort of social at the moment. That said, we've been doing a bit of prototyping around native. So let's show you some examples here. So when we're doing native augmented reality, you can go down the line of programming in sort of Swift or sort of Java for Android, but we don't do that. We actually use a tool called Unity, which is a 3D gaming engine in Inception. It still is that. It's a jack-of-all-trades tool these days. You can actually build mobile phone applications in it. And it's got AR and VR built into its core. So yeah, we use Unity, and it's also cross-platform, so we can publish to Android, we can publish to iOS. That's a very early AR prototype we did for not that glamorous. It's an eczema spray. So it's bringing to life like sort of medicine and showing you the how to use it essentially via the phone. A big area we're focusing on at the moment is try before you buy. So this is the idea that you can't get to a shop, or it may be to an expensive product. So this is for a watch company which we're working with at the moment. So the idea is you can print off a very cheap paper wrist strap, essentially, which has got all your measurements for your watch, and then you hold it up to the camera, and that acts as the AR target. They're called the target in augmented reality world, and that fires up the 3D representation of a watch, which tells the right time and date and everything. And you can swipe left and right to go through different watch faces, so you can try different things on. So really useful for expensive purchases, and one of the most expensive purchases you'll ever make is probably a house, unless you're buying a Swiss watch of some kind. So this is a visualization of a house which we're prototyping at the moment for a housing company. So the idea here is you can hold up the camera to the screen, and it brings it to life, and you can get really down into the detail, and we've built it so you can change like worktops on the kitchen and that sort of thing, and there's hotspots so you can click on various areas, find out more information about the size of the kitchen, that sort of thing. The world of social. So this is where we're spending a lot of our time at the moment. So the social prototyping really came from sort of Snapchat, and Snapchat have got a proprietary tool called Lens Studio, which is the one there. So the stereotype of social AR is definitely like face filters, and that's still very much the sort of big part of it at the moment. But it's definitely moving in an interesting direction. Facebook have invested lots and lots of money in AR and have basically sort of copied Snapchat to some degree. With Spark AR Studio, which is a sort of clone of Lens Studio, but it's increasing in functionality sort of by the week, really. It's an amazing tool. Here's some things we created fairly recently. Well, this one was quite old, actually, but this is in Lens Studio, just a very simple sort of face filter we did for Aldi. So Aldi sponsor in the UK Team GB, which is the Olympics team. So it's just a very simple face filter. And then at the moment, like I say, we've been investing quite a bit of time in Facebook and their Spark AR platform. One of our developers, or my creative technologist essentially, called Joe Portis, he's amazing at creating these face filters. He pumps them out nightly, pretty much. So there's some simple fun things that were created recently. The puppy dog one is actually very popular in Chile. Who knew? Anyway, there's and then this one here was created as part of Berlin, in Berlin for the Spark AR hackathon. Joe attended that, and his team that he was with actually won. And it's just this one I wanted to put in because it's showing you that face filters aren't just fun. Like this one's showing the melting of an ice cap and the rising of sea level, so there can be quite interesting messages. And this is from F8. So I think Facebook F8 conference was only 3 weeks ago, but this one was from a few years ago where Mark Zuckerberg said, we're going to make the camera in Facebook's app the first augmented reality platform, and they're really driving that forward at the moment. They're talking about AR being everywhere at some point, which is quite scary, but it's also quite interesting. What can we do at the moment for brands? And a lot of it's moving away from face filters and more towards commerce and places and spaces, so bringing spaces to life in some sort of way. You can imagine a Codegarden AR filter which showed you where the different venues were and stuff like that. Here's some very simple examples. This one we did recently, or fairly recently, using Spark AR. It's quite a simple filter, but at the time we didn't have a client, but we really had some time to create some filters. So we actually went out and sourced a client. So this chap was called Mark Wood, and he's an explorer. And he came in to do some lessons on climate change for us. We were like, do you want a filter? And he was like, yes, I'll take a filter, please. So we built him that, and he's using it as part of his educational program. He's currently trying to scale Everest at the moment. So this filter was to bring that to life in a fun way for the kids that he's teaching, essentially. And then I don't wanted to put this one in because it was built in Spark AR Studio, but it's not augmented reality. And this is because I feel like this area is such like the Wild West. We've got all these new tools, and for this one, we slammed two things together just to see what would happen. So this is Spark AR slammed together with Facebook Live. So this was a campaign that ran in the UK for Aldi's Christmas campaign, where we have a character called Kevin, the carrot, and he got himself into trouble in the teaser campaign that went out on TV and crashed his truck. So this went out straight after the campaign had finished, and he had to vote whether you wanted him to sort of survive or fall off the cliff, essentially. And it worked really well because the Spark AR has got some tight integrations with the Facebook API, so it was pretty much real time. So that worked really well. Cool, but what about Umbraco, I hear you say? I know we've not got much time left, so I'll try and make this fast. Or I put that slide in as well. There is some Umbraco. At McCann Manchester, we are gold partners with Umbraco, so is it too much to say it runs through our blood? Probably not. So by its very nature, Umbraco has made it into our innovation efforts. And we use it for prototyping, which might sound silly, but when we build a prototype that's got legs, we start injecting Umbraco into it to manage the content and just to see what we can do with that, really. And sometimes it takes it to new levels, and also we can get content editors and designers involved earlier, so it's not all on the developers. So, very quickly, this one, I've not got much time here, so this one was for that Hotspot one I told you about earlier. So this is managing hotspots on the target. So for this, we actually used an old, long-forgotten package, I think it was by Matt Brailsford, called Photon, which is like a hotspot editor, which worked really well for this. So we actually sort of highlight areas on the actual target, and it allows us to put metadata in there. And then we send it up to a cloud AR server. There's two. There's Vuforia and Easy AR. Vuforia is very robust, but it is also quite expensive in production. So we use that for where we need campaigns to be, to work well under load. Easy AR is a Chinese company, works just as well, but there's a bit of latency there, but it's a lot cheaper. Talk to me about that later if you want some more information on that one, because I want to get to this one. So I'm not sure if you saw this tweet. We came up with this beer for the Codegarden beer pull request called Off Your Face, and that was a teaser for this small bit of fun campaign augmented reality filter we're going to launch now. Here's a close-up of the beer, in case you didn't. I saw a few people with it the other night. So presenting, can we get a drum roll or something, maybe? There, that'll do. So we're presenting Spark AR. So this is the first time we've actually integrated Umbraco into a Spark AR filter. So presenting Off Your Face Codegarden AR filter, which is a bit of fun, really, in the spirit of Codegarden and some of the silliness that goes on, particularly at the bingo sessions. Looks like this. So it is, you've got various members of Umbraco HQ. This is like the opposite of GDPR, whose faces are on there. Can anyone guess who that might be? Yeah, it's Niels, our chief unicorn. Sorry, Niels, if you're in here. It's all Umbraco CMS powered, which is amazing. We knew it was possible because the actual tech isn't that difficult, but would Facebook approve it? They approved it last minute yesterday, so we managed to get it in here, and it's available to use, so if anyone wants to take a picture of that, you can start having a little play with it. It's a funny game, it's a bit of fun, really. I'll distribute that QR code at some point as well. I'll let people take a picture of that. Cool. It's going now. Cool. Very simple. It's just a JSON API endpoint, essentially. But the trick there is if you are going to do that, we didn't know if Facebook would approve it, really, because what's to stop us suddenly being malicious with it? We're not going to do that. But if you are going to take that route, it took us about 2 weeks to get approval, so top tip there if you want to try any of those out. Cool, so quick roundup there. So pick your niche. We picked, out of all of those emerging technologies that are out there, we targeted chat and we targeted augmented reality. So what can your developers already do? What skills have we already got? Focus on them. Look for problems, a little bit like what Chris said earlier. Be innovative with your tools. We slammed together two things. We didn't know whether it would work. It did, and it won some awards, that one as well, which is amazing. And Umbraco can actually make a very good prototyping tool. So very quickly, quick summary. I think we've only got 1 minute left. Summary. Make space.
So find that space. It doesn't have to be a physical space in terms of a room or an office, just somewhere away from your day-to-day that allows you to get into that mindset to be innovative.
Cool.
Tools, you need a springboard to get thinking differently. So whether it's design thinking or rapid hacks or whatever it may be, find those tools and frameworks that will put you in that right mindset to allow you to truly explore the problem and come up with some wild and wacky solutions.
Yeah, and finally, sort of make culture. Don't make yogurt, make a culture. So take this tech out to the wider team. Don't do it as a silo as developers. We've tried that in the past. It doesn't work. Get other people involved. Yeah,
build a tribe, basically.
Fantastic. Sorry it was a bit rushed at the end, but thanks so much for coming along.
Thank you.
I think the Umbraco Awards are next door. So thanks.
Thank you.